My wife didn't ask for a divorce, she asked for space. It sounded softer, kinder, like a pause instead of an ending. We were sitting at the small table by the window in our apartment, the one that faces a strip of skyline and a tangle of traffic lights that never really sleep. Outside, the city hummed in low, distant layers. Inside, the only sound was the faint clink of my fork against an almost empty plate and the rain tapping lazily against the glass. Her chair across from me was half turned away, angled just enough that she didn't have to fully face me. Her fingers traced the rim of her water glass as if she was trying to memorize its shape. She hadn't touched the food. "I think I need space," she said quietly. No raised voice, no tears. Just the words dropped into the middle of our ordinary Tuesday night like a stone into still water. I remember staring at the candle between us, the one she had insisted on buying months ago to make dinners feel less like leftovers and more like a date. It had burned down so low that wax had spilled over the side and hardened in messy, pale layers. "Space," I repeated, my voice sounding thinner than I expected. She nodded, her eyes fixed on the condensation sliding down her glass. Her hair fell forward over her shoulder, and she didn't tuck it behind her ear the way she usually did when she was nervous. She just let it fall. "Another small wall. We've been stuck," she said. "It feels like we're going in circles. I don't know what I feel anymore. I just need to breathe without feeling like I'm failing you." The thing about being blindsided is that, later, you remember every little detail you ignored. The cool dinners, the late nights, the way her phone had become another person at our table. At that moment, though, all I could feel was a kind of slow, spreading numbness. "How much space?" I asked, because somehow that felt like the rational question. "Like a break, a separation. Do you want to move out?" She flinched at the word separation, like it physically hurt. "No, I don't know, I just need you to not push, to not ask me what's wrong every night, to stop hovering. I need to figure out what I want." What she wants, not what we want. I let the words sink in, the way the rain outside was sinking into the dark asphalt below. Cars passed, their headlights smearing across the wet street in pale streaks. The city didn't care that my marriage had just shifted into a tense, unfamiliar shape. "So you want me to back off," I said slowly. "Give you space, stop asking, just let you be." She swallowed, finally looking up at me. Her eyes were red as if she had already cried before this conversation. "Yeah, for a while, please, I just feel suffocated. I feel like you're always there, watching, worried I can't breathe." The worst part was, I believed her. Not because her words made sense, but because I loved her enough to think the problem might actually be me. "Okay," I said after a long pause. "If you need space, I'll give it to you." Her shoulders dropped, a small exhale leaving her lips, like she had been bracing for a fight that never came. "Thank you," she whispered. That night I did what she asked. I didn't reach for her when we went to bed. I lay on my side of the mattress, staring at the ceiling as the distant sound of traffic drifted up through the cracked window. Her back was to me, a cold, curved outline in the dim light. Over the next week, I stepped back. I stopped asking where she was when she texted that she'd be late. I stopped calling when she didn't answer right away. I started saying, "Okay, no problem," instead of, "Are you sure everything's all right?" I went for walks alone in the evenings, hands shoved into my jacket pockets, the city air damp and sharp in my lungs. I took the long way home from work, lingering under awnings, watching strangers hurry by with their umbrellas and coffees and tangled lives. Inside our apartment, the space grew. Not just between us, but around the objects we shared. Her mug sat untouched on the counter in the mornings while I drank my coffee alone, watching the pale, gray light seep into the kitchen. The throw blanket she always used on the couch stayed folded. Her perfume began to fade from the hallway. One night, about 2 weeks after that conversation, I came home earlier than usual. The rain had returned, fine and steady, softening the edges of the city outside. The hallway to our unit smelled like damp wool and floor cleaner. The fluorescent light above our door flickered in tired pulses. Inside, the apartment lights were low. Her shoes were by the door, but the place felt oddly staged. The living room was neat. The cushions on the couch were perfectly aligned. The candle on the table was new, its wick still untouched. "Hey," I called out, dropping my keys into the bowl by the door. "I'm home." No answer, just the soft hum of the fridge and the distant hiss of traffic through the window. I stepped into the kitchen and froze. Her phone was on the counter, screen up, the kind of mistake she never made anymore. A message preview glowed across it. "Can't wait to see you again. I miss you already." My lungs forgot how to work for a second. I stared at the words, the contact name partially visible, just a first name, a man's name. The world narrowed to the sound of the rain on the glass and the soft buzz of electricity in the walls. My first instinct was to look away, to respect the space she had asked for, to pretend I hadn't seen it. But something in me had already begun to crumble, slowly, quietly, like plastered dust falling behind a wall. Her laughter drifted from down the hall, muffled. The bedroom door was half closed. I heard her voice low, followed by another tone tinny, coming through a speaker. She was on a call, not with me. My hand trembled as I backed away from the phone as if it had burned me. My heart pounded, and yet everything around me felt slow, distant, underwater. She needed space. I had given it, and in that space something else had moved in. The bedroom door creaked slightly. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Then a soft laugh I hadn't heard in months, not with me anyway. I stood in the center of the dim kitchen, the glow from the phone screen painting a small, cold rectangle of light across the countertop. For a moment I wondered if I was overreacting, if I was being paranoid, if maybe the message meant nothing. Then another notification buzzed and the preview flashed again. "You sure he won't be around tonight?" My throat tightened. Up until that exact second, space had felt like a painful, confusing request. Now it felt like a lie with a polite bow on top. I stepped back, the floorboards creaking under my weight. In the quiet, our entire marriage seemed to tilt. From down the hallway, I heard the bedroom door latch click softly, as if she didn't want anyone to accidentally walk in. I stood there between the kitchen and the living room, staring at that closed door, listening to my wife's muffled voice on the other side. And for the first time, I wondered if the space she needed was actually an exit she didn't have the courage to name. The phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up the dark. I took one slow breath, then another, and instead of confronting her, instead of knocking on that door, I did something that surprised even me. I turned away, picked up my keys, and quietly stepped back out into the hallway, the rain smell rushing in as I opened the door, leaving her voice, her laughter, and that closed bedroom behind. The door clicked shut. Out in the corridor, under the flickering light, I found myself wondering, if I kept stepping back like she asked, how far would she go? The night after I saw those messages, I barely slept. I lay on the couch instead of in the bed we shared, the city's distant hum bleeding through the window. Headlights slid across the ceiling in slow, ghostly arcs. The cushions under me felt unfamiliar, like I was already a guest in my own home. Every time I closed my eyes, the words flashed again behind my eyelids. "Can't wait to see you again. You sure he won't be around tonight?" There was no more pretending. Space wasn't about breathing. It was about hiding. In the morning, the apartment was washed in dull gray light. Rain had eased to a mist, the windows slick with it. The smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen. She moved around quietly, as if careful not to disturb me. When I walked in, she was leaning against the counter, scrolling her phone, a mug cupped in her hands. "Hey," she said, a little too casual. "You slept out here." "Yeah," I replied, reaching for another mug. "Didn't want to bother you." She hesitated, then said, "You're not mad, are you?" "About what I said the other night." I stirred sugar into my coffee, watching the swirl disappear. "You said you needed space," I answered. "I'm giving it to you." Her shoulders loosened at that. She smiled, small, tentative. "Thank you. I need to figure my head out." I looked at her, then really looked. The faint dark circles beneath her eyes, the way her hair was still damp from the shower, the necklace around her throat that I hadn't seen before, thin and delicate, catching the low light. "New?" I asked, nodding at it. She touched it instinctively. "Oh, yeah, just something I picked up. It was on sale." The answer came too fast, too smooth. I took a sip of coffee to keep from saying anything I'd regret. Over the next few days, space turned into a series of subtle disappearances. She started staying out later, coming home with the smell of different colognes clinging faintly to her clothes, masked under perfume. Her phone was always face down now, always with her, even when she went to the bathroom. I didn't ask, I didn't follow, I didn't question. Instead, I watched, quietly, like someone observing a storm from behind thick glass. One night, around midnight, I found myself at the living room window, watching the rain streak down like lines of static. Her location on our shared app, something we'd once used just for convenience, showed her at a bar across town. The little dot blinked steadily on the map. She hadn't mentioned going out. I zoomed in, the name of the place appearing. I knew it. A dim, low-lit bar near the river. The kind of place you go when you want to be seen by someone who isn't your spouse. I stared at that blinking dot for a long time. Then I put my phone down. If she needed space, I told myself, then I'd give her all the room in the world, to either come back honestly or walk away fully. But the thing about space is, it doesn't stay empty for long. On a Thursday night, she came home later than ever. The clock over the stove read 1:23 a.m. The city outside was a smear of damp light and quiet streets. I was sitting at the table in the dim kitchen, an untouched cup of tea in front of me, the steam long gone. The door opened with a soft click. She stepped in, trying to move quietly, but the slight stumble in her walk and the rustle of her jacket gave her away. "Hey," I said. She froze, keys halfway to the bowl. "You're up," she said, surprised. "Yeah." I glanced at the clock. Late night. She shrugged, eyes avoiding mine. "Just went out with some friends, lost track of time." I nodded slowly. "Friends," I repeated. "Anyone I know." Something flickered across her face. Annoyance, guilt, fear. "Do we have to do this?" She snapped lightly. "You said you'd give me space." That doesn't mean interrogations every time I step outside. I asked one question, I replied evenly. "You're right, though, I did say I'd give you space." She blew out a breath, dropped her keys, and brushed past me toward the bedroom. The faint scent of a different cologne lingered in the air behind her. I sat there for a while after she disappeared down the hallway, staring at the empty chair across from me. The next afternoon, I finally decided I needed more than guesses. The rain had cleared, leaving the city washed and pale under a washed-out sky. I left work early, my chest tight, my mind buzzing with questions I was tired of pretending not to have. I didn't tell her, I just went home. The apartment was quiet when I stepped inside, but there was evidence of movement. Her jacket on the back of a chair, her bag half-zipped on the couch, a faint, unfamiliar cologne hanging in the air like a question. A pair of men's sneakers sat by the door. Not mine. Everything inside me went still. I stared at them for a long moment, my heart beat a slow, heavy drum in my chest. Then I heard it, low voices down the hall, muffled by the half-closed bedroom door, her laugh, his murmur. My fingers tightened around the strap of my bag. I walked forward, each step measured, the floor creaking just enough to announce my presence without giving me away entirely. At the bedroom door, I paused. Her voice floated through, soft and playful in a way I hadn't heard in months. "I told you he's been distant," she was saying. "He barely looks at me anymore. I think he's checked out." The irony of it almost made me laugh. Another voice, deeper, a man's, replied, "Good, makes it easier, doesn't it?" I felt something crack, quiet and deep, like ice breaking underfoot. There it was, the other man. The one who'd stepped into the space I'd been asked to create. I could have barged in, could have shouted, raged, thrown everything into chaos. Instead, I turned around and walked back to the living room. My hands were shaking as I picked up my phone, not from shock anymore, from a strange, hollow calm. I called a friend, the only one who knew enough to understand if I showed up at his place with a bag and no explanation. "Can you talk?" I asked when he answered. "Yeah, man." "What's going on?" I looked down the hallway toward the closed bedroom door, where my wife was quietly rewriting our marriage for someone else. I think," I said slowly, "I just found out what needing space really meant." We talked in low, practical tones. About leases, about overnight bags, about how long someone could pretend not to know the truth before it started poisoning them from the inside. By the time I hung up, their voices had gone quiet. The bedroom door clicked open. She stepped out first, her hair slightly mussed, her expression soft and distracted. He followed a second later, a man in a button-down shirt, nervous and trying to look casual. We all froze. Her eyes widened. His mouth opened, then shut. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. "You're home," she said, as if the sight of me in my own living room was the strangest detail in the room. "Yeah," I replied. "Seemed like a good time to be here." The other man shifted his weight. "I should." "No," I cut in quietly. "You're already here. Might as well stay for a second." My wife's hand flew to her necklace, fingers shaking now. "Listen, it's not," she began. "It is," I said. "You don't need to explain. You asked for space. I gave it to you. You filled it." The man looked at her, then at me, then back at his shoes. A kind of trembling panic flashed across her face. "This isn't what you think," she rushed out. "I just needed someone to talk to. Things have been bad between us and—" "Someone to talk to doesn't usually leave their shoes by the door," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Or sound like that behind a closed bedroom." Her cheeks flushed, shame and anger fighting for space. "You haven't exactly been present either," she snapped. "You've been cold, distant, acting like a stranger." "What did you expect me to do?" It was almost surreal, watching her twist my stepping back into an accusation. Behind her, he murmured, "Maybe I should go." "No," I said again, looking straight at him. "Stay. I want you both to hear this." I picked up my keys from the bowl, the metal cool against my palm. "I'm going to do what you asked," I told her. "I'm going to give you space, real space. The kind you don't come back from by just saying you're confused." Her eyes widened, panic breaking through her defensiveness. "Wait." I looked at him. "You can have the rest of the afternoon, or the week, or however long this lasts. But I'm done being the one who doesn't know what's really happening in his own home. Her lips parted, her voice came out small. Are you leaving? I nodded once, yeah. For now. She took a step forward, reaching out as if to catch something already falling. You can't just walk out, she said, her voice rising with something close to fear. We need to talk about this. You can't just disappear. I met her eyes, feeling the bitter twist of it. You needed space, I said softly. I'm finally respecting that. And as I opened the door and stepped back out into the hallway, the rain-scented air rushing over me, I heard her call my name. Not calm, not composed, not like someone in control of the distance they'd created. For the first time since this began, she sounded afraid. The first few nights after I left, the silence was a relief. I slept on my friend's lumpy couch in his small apartment, listening to the muffled sounds of the city through a different set of windows. No faint scent of her perfume, no half-open bedroom door. No phone buzzing with messages I had to pretend I hadn't seen. I woke up early and walked, long stretches of pavement under a pale sky, passing coffee shops and early commuters with tired faces. The air was cold, my breath coming out in faint clouds. Grief doesn't announce itself loudly. It seeps in through the small hours, brushing against your thoughts when you reach for a person who isn't there anymore, when you think of texting them out of habit, when you see something you know they'd comment on. I kept my phone on silent, at first out of anger, then out of self-preservation. She called, texted. At the beginning, the messages were short. We need to talk. Please call me. When I didn't respond, they changed. Where are you? You can't just vanish. I'm worried. Then, eventually, can we please fix this? I read them all. Answered none. I spent my evenings by a big window in my friend's living room, watching the traffic below. Headlights moving in narrow, endless lines. People going home to someone or away from someone. The apartment we had shared became a ghost in my head. I could still picture her standing in the kitchen, fingers around that thin new necklace. Could still hear the muffled sound of her laughter behind the bedroom door, laughter that no longer belonged to me. About a week later, I got the email from the building management. Routine notice. Reminder about access codes. A line at the end, please note, a request to update resident access has been submitted. If you did not authorize any changes, contact us immediately. She was trying to reframe the space even further. I sat with that email open for a long time, the blue glow of the screen painting my hands. And then, as if the universe wasn't done with its little tragedies, my phone lit up again. This time it was her name on the screen, attached to a simple text, I'm outside your building. My chest tightened. I walked to the window and looked down. There she was, standing by the curb, coat pulled tight, hair damp from the drizzle. She looked smaller from up here, more fragile, less like the woman who had calmly asked for space and more like someone who'd realized what she'd spent it. My friend glanced up from the kitchen counter. That her? Yeah, I said quietly. You going to let her in? I didn't answer right away. There's a kind of power in distance when you've been on the losing end of it for too long. The power to decide whether a door opens, whether a conversation happens, whether someone who broke you gets a chance to explain. Another text came in. Please, I just want to talk. I'll wait. I stood there for a full minute, watching the way she shifted her weight from foot to foot, checking her phone, glancing up at the building. Finally, I sighed. Yeah, I'll let her up. The hallway outside my friend's apartment was quiet when I opened the door. The hum of the elevator echoed faintly down the corridor. A second later, it dinged, and she stepped out. She looked tired, eyes swollen, makeup worn thin at the edges, as if she'd wiped away tears and hadn't bothered to fix what was left. The necklace was gone. Her hands clutched the strap of her bag like it was the only solid thing in the world. Hey, she said, voice small. Hey. For a moment we just stood there, staring at each other in the muted hallway light. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside. She walked past me, taking in the small apartment, the sagging couch, the half-empty coffee mug on the table. So this is where you've been, she murmured. Sometimes, I replied. Sometimes I just walk. She turned to face me, her eyes already shining. You just left, she said softly. You didn't even give me a chance to explain. I let out a breath through my nose. You had a man in our bedroom. I think some things explained themselves. She flinched, shame breaking through the carefully held composure. It wasn't, she started, then stopped, pressing her lips together. I messed up, I know that, I don't even know where to start. Try the beginning, I said. Why space? Why not the truths? She sat on the edge of the couch, fingers twisting in her lap. The truth sounded too final, she whispered. I didn't know what I wanted, I was overwhelmed. I felt like I was drowning, and I didn't know if it was because of us, or because of me, or because of everything else in my life. And him, I asked, where does he fit in? Her eyes closed briefly. He was easy, she admitted. He listened. He didn't know all my flaws yet, didn't know all the fights we'd already had. He made me feel wanted, like I wasn't failing at everything. The words hit a strange place inside me. Not because I didn't expect them, but because they were so painfully human. So you needed me to step back, I said slowly, so you could step closer to him. Tears spilled over now, trailing down her cheeks. It wasn't supposed to go that far, she choked out. I thought I could figure myself out and come back to you. I thought it was temporary. I thought it'd pick us in the end. I leaned against the wall opposite her, arms crossed, because if I didn't hold myself together physically, I wasn't sure I could hold my voice steady. What changed? I asked. She looked up at me then, and there it was, fear, regret, something brittle and breaking in her gaze. You leaving, she whispered. You actually stepping back. I didn't think you would. I thought you'd fight, keep asking. Keep holding on, and when you just walked out, it hit me. I didn't just ask for space. I pushed you away. That's what you wanted, I said quietly. No, she said, shaking her head hard. I wanted you to stay close enough to chase me, but far enough that I didn't have to look at what I was doing. I wanted both, and when you left, it made everything real. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, breath hitching. I ended it with him, she said. The same day you walked out, he wanted more, a real relationship. I thought I did too, but the second you were gone, I realized I didn't want a life with him. I wanted the comfort without the consequences. I wanted to be selfish without losing you. There it was, the ugly kind of truth that doesn't fit into simple labels like villain and victim. I'm not going to tell you I deserve another chance, she continued, voice rough. I don't. I know what I did. I know I broke something I can't fully repair, but I need you to know this wasn't about you not being enough. It was about me not being enough for myself. The room went quiet. Outside, distant traffic hummed. A siren wailed faintly, then faded. The morning light through the window was soft and unforgiving. Why are you really here? I asked after a long pause. Is it because you miss me, because you regret him, or because you hate the idea that I might move on first? She swallowed hard. I'm here because I love you, she said simply. Because I made the worst choices of my life, and I finally felt the weight of them when you stopped carrying me through them. I'm here because I can't stand the idea of you thinking I didn't care at all. Love. That word, which once felt like a warm place to rest, now felt like something sharp I had to handle carefully. I closed my eyes for a moment, then opened them again. Do you want to fix our marriage? I asked, or do you just want to stop feeling guilty? She looked stunned by the question. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her gaze dropped to her hands. Both, she whispered. I won't lie. I hate myself for what I did, but I miss you. I miss us. I miss the stupid, quiet things, the way you make coffee too strong, the way you leave your shoes in the hallway, the way you talk to the TV during games like it can hear you. I miss falling asleep knowing you're there, even if we're not talking. And the space, I asked, do you still need it? She shook her head, a humorless, broken laugh slipping out. I needed honesty, she said. I just didn't know how to ask for it without tearing everything apart, so I tore it apart anyway, just slower. Silence again. My chest ached with a strange mixture of longing and exhaustion. There was a part of me that wanted to cross the room, pull her into my arms, and pretend this was just a bad dream we could wake up from together. But there was another part, a newer, quieter part, that had learned the hard way what my own dignity felt like when I stopped abandoning it. What do you want from me right now? I asked. Specifically, not in vague emotional terms. What are you asking? She looked up at me, eyes red, jaw trembling. I'm asking, she said slowly, for a chance to try. To see if there's anything left to rebuild. I'm asking you to come home, or let me come back there with you. We can do counseling, set rules, transparency, whatever you want. I'll give you passwords, locations, everything. I'll do the work. I need to know if you're willing to meet me anywhere at all. I let her words hang between us. They sounded earnest, desperate, but desperation could come from loss of control as much as from love. Do you understand, I said quietly, that even if I try, I'll never be the same person I was before, that the way I trusted you, that version of me is gone? Tears spilled again. Yes, she breathed, I know. I'm not asking you to pretend this didn't happen. I'm asking you not to end our story here. Our story, there was a time when that phrase would have been enough to make me say yes on instinct. Now, it just made my chest hurt. I pushed off the wall and walked to the window, looking out at the city spread beneath the gray sky. Cars moving, people crossing streets, lives beginning and ending in small ways every second. Behind me, I could hear her breathing, unsteady. Waiting, do you remember? I asked without turning around. The night you asked for space, the way you said you couldn't breathe. Yes, she whispered. I spent weeks thinking I was the problem, I said. That my wanting to be close, to understand, to fix things was somehow suffocating you. I twisted myself into knots to make room for you. I stepped back further and further, and you didn't breathe easier, did you? You just used that space to put someone else where I used to be. She let out a soft, broken sound. I know, she said. I know, and I wish I could undo it. I would give anything to undo it. I turned then. Her eyes met mine, full of apologies that couldn't change anything that had already happened. Here's the truth, I said softly. I still love you. That didn't just vanish, but I don't trust you. And I don't know how to be in a marriage where I'm constantly wondering if the space between us is a room you've left open for someone else. So you're saying there's no chance? She asked, voice raw. I'm saying, I replied, I don't know. Not yet. The answer seemed to knock the air out of her more than a clean no would have. She nodded slowly, accepting it like a sentence she'd expected but still wasn't ready for. Can I ask just one thing? She murmured. What? If you decide you can't do this, she said. If you decide to walk away for good, please don't just disappear like I did emotionally. Tell me, look me in the eyes and tell me it's over. I owe you that much honesty. You owe yourself that much too. Her words landed somewhere deep. Honesty, the thing we both had run from in different ways. She stood, smoothing her coat with shaking hands. I'll go, she said softly. I've said what I needed to say. I'll wait to hear from you, even if what I hear is goodbye. She walked toward the door, then paused with her hand on the knob. I'm so sorry, she whispered without turning around, not just for what I did, but for making you doubt your own instincts. You were never the one who made it hard to breathe. That was me, carrying secrets I didn't have the courage to put down. The door clicked open, light from the hallway spilled in. Then, just before she stepped out, she turned her head a fraction. If you decide to let me go, she said, I'll understand, but I'll never pretend I didn't lose the best thing I had. The door closed behind her with a soft, final sound. In the quiet that followed, the apartment felt both smaller and strangely wider, as if it was waiting to see which way I would choose to fill the space she had just left. The morning I knew, really knew, what I had to do was quieter than the others. The rain had finally stopped. Light slipped through the blinds in thin, pale stripes, dust shifting lazily in the beam. The city outside sounded washed, softer, as if someone had turned the volume down. I woke up before my alarm on my friend's couch, the blanket twisted around my legs. For a moment I reached for a warmth that wasn't there, my hand landing on cold fabric. Habits linger long after the person they formed around is gone. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying her visit in my mind, her words. Her tears, her admission that she wanted comfort without consequences. Part of me still ached to try, to go back, to believe that therapy and openness and time could rebuild what had been quietly dismantled when I wasn't looking. But underneath that ache there was something steadier, a low, quiet knowing. It wasn't anger, not anymore. It was a kind of acceptance that felt like standing on a shore, watching a ship you once lived on drift further and further out, too damaged to call back. I got up, made coffee in a chipped mug, and stood by the window, fingers wrapped around the warmth. The world below was already moving, people heading to work, buses sighing at every stop, a cyclist weaving through traffic, the smell of street-level espresso drifting upward when the wind shifted. My phone buzzed on the table. A new message from her. No paragraphs, no begging, just 3 words. Have you decided? I stared at the screen for a long beat. Then slowly I typed, can you meet me at the apartment this afternoon? She responded almost immediately. Yes, I'll be there. Hours later, I found myself standing outside the building that used to mean home. The familiar hum of the lobby, the soft ding of the elevator, the smell of old carpet and cleaning products. It all wrapped around me like a memory I wasn't sure I wanted to wear again. The ride up felt longer than usual. When the doors opened on our floor, my chest tightened. Our front door looked the same little scuff near the bottom, same slightly crooked number. I took a breath and knocked. The door opened a few seconds later. She stood there, eyes already searching mine for an answer she probably could sense before I even spoke. The apartment behind her looked neat, almost staged. The candle on the table was lit. Hey, she said softly. Hey. I stepped inside. The air smelled like coffee and something faintly floral. Her hair was pulled back, face bare, as if she hadn't wanted makeup to turn this into a performance. We stood opposite each other at the small table by the window, the same spot where she'd once told me she needed space. Outside, the sky was a muted, endless gray. Do you want coffee? She asked out of habit. I shook my head. No, thanks. Silence settled between us, not hostile, just heavy. She swallowed. So, I looked around the apartment one last time. The couch where I'd waited for her on the nights she came home late. The kitchen where I'd seen her phone light up with someone else's words. the hallway leading to the bedroom where my heart had broken without me being in the room. Then I brought my eyes back to her. "I've been trying to find a way," I said quietly, "to say this without hurting you more than I already have by leaving. But I don't think there is one." Her fingers tightened around the back of the chair. "Say it anyway," she whispered. "I promised I'd take honesty even if it breaks me." I nodded more to myself than to her. "I can't come back," I said. The words hung there, simple and devastating. Her face crumpled just a fraction, like a building taking the first hit before the rest follows. "I thought about it," I continued. "About counseling and rules and trying to rebuild from the ashes. I thought about holding you at night and wondering who else you thought about in those same arms. I thought about looking at your phone and feeling my stomach drop every time it lit up. I thought about living in a constant state of checking and doubting and calling that a marriage." A tear slipped down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. "And," she asked, voice small. "And I realized," I said softly, "that even if I still love you, I love the version of me that knows his worth more. I can forgive you one day, maybe sooner than I expect. But I can't unknow what I know, and I can't build a life on top of a foundation I don't trust anymore." She let out a slow, shuddering breath. "So this is it," she murmured. "This is the part where you let me go." "It's the part," I said, "where we let each other go. Because you needed space, and I finally understand that giving it doesn't always mean waiting in the doorway for someone to come back. Sometimes it means stepping away without leaving a light on." Her shoulders shook now, but her voice stayed strangely steady. "I deserve this," she said. "I know I do, but can I ask you something, just one more time?" "Yeah," I replied. "Do you hate me?" she asked. I looked at her for a long moment. "No," I said. "I don't. I'm angry at what you did. I'm hurt. But hate is wanting something bad for you. And I don't. I hope you learn from this. I hope you get honest with yourself. I hope someday you treat someone and yourself with the kind of care we both forgot to give to this." Her face broke then, tears falling freely. Not the dramatic wailing of a movie, just quiet, helpless crying. "I wish I had realized all this before I broke us," she whispered. "I do too," I admitted, "but wishing doesn't change where we are." We talked logistics after that. Lisa's moving out, splitting the things that used to belong to us. It was oddly calm, two people dismantling a life with the gentleness they hadn't used when they still had a chance to save it. At one point, she picked up a photo frame from the shelf. Us on a balcony in the city, years ago, the sunset throwing warm light over our faces. We were laughing at something just outside the frame. She held it out to me. "Do you want this?" she asked. I thought about it. "You keep it," I said. "I think you need the reminder more than I do." She nodded, pressing her lips together to keep them from trembling. When everything practical had been said, there was nothing left but the hardest part. I walked to the door and put my hand on the knob. Behind me, her voice came, soft and raw. "Can I hug you?" she asked. I hesitated. Then I turned and nodded. She crossed the room slowly, as if the space between us was filled with glass. When she reached me, she wrapped her arms around me gently, not pulling, not clinging, just holding. I felt her shoulders shake. Her forehead pressed against my chest. My own arms closed around her automatically, years of muscle memory guiding them. For a moment, it felt like the old us, two people who had weathered bad days together, who had believed the world was easier to face as long as they had this small, shared shelter. Then the moment passed, and all that remained was the truth between us. "I'm sorry," she whispered into my shirt. "I know," I said. "I believe you." "Do you forgive me?" she asked, voice barely audible. "Not yet," I answered honestly. "But I want to, and I think one day I will, for both our sakes." She pulled back, eyes searching mine. "Goodbye," she murmured. "Goodbye," I replied. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. The air out there felt different, quieter. Like the world had exhaled. As I walked toward the elevator, I didn't feel triumphant. There was no satisfaction in leaving, just a tired, calm kind of peace. The elevator doors slid shut, reflecting my face back at me, older somehow, but clearer. Outside, morning light had strengthened, turning the city a softer shade of gray. People moved along the sidewalks, coffees in hand, bags over their shoulders, each carrying their own private endings and beginnings. I stepped out onto the street and let the cool air fill my lungs. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for her to come closer or farther. I wasn't measuring my worth against someone else's attention. I wasn't holding my breath to see what her next move would be. She had needed space. I had given it, and now, finally, I was claiming some of my own, not the kind that pushes someone away, the kind that makes room for grief, for healing, for whoever I might become when I'm no longer standing in the shadow of what she did. I walked toward the corner, the light changing from red to green, the day opening up in front of me. Behind me, in an apartment that used to be ours, my wife was alone with her choices. Ahead of me, there was nothing certain. Just the quiet, terrifying, beautiful possibility of a life I could build from the pieces she hadn't managed to break. Beautiful possibility of a life I could build from the pieces she hadn't managed to break.